Hello world, I am Curtis Simpson and this is Jective's Typography News number 18. Today is September 28th, 2025, and I have a pretty traditional episode for you today. We're going to do some branding, new releases, got some updates and upcoming fonts. We've got a fun typeface. It's going to be wood, like not like a wood block digital design, but actually made out of wood. I got a few articles that I want to point out, put on your radar. We'll take a little bit of an in-depth. The one by Elizabeth Goodspeed. If you're looking at the thumbnail, you probably saw her name on there. So we'll get to that. And then I've got a video to send you off with once you're done watching this one. I'm gonna jump right into it. I'm not gonna have my face cam on during when we're looking at the projects today. I've been creating some overlay graphics for typography news, and I'm basing those off of like traditional news, like broadcasts. And the one thing that I noticed is that whenever they're cutting away to something else, either they have a nice split screen or they have no talking head at all. And since I don't have my split screen graphic made yet, I think I'm just going to go ahead and let the focus be on the content. And then, we'll cut back to my wonderful face now and then. But go ahead and let me know what you think about it. I think that it would be fun to make this look just like a traditional news program, with better typography. But rather than looking like a Twitch streamer, and I think that traditionally live streams do have the little face cam on there, but I think it's mainly because of what we've seen on Twitch and what we've seen other live streams do. I think that maybe making this more like a traditional news program would be ideal. But let me know what you think. I'm going to turn off my face cam and switch over to the monitor, and let's look at some branding. This first one here is going to be from Redscout. Redscout, it says up there, is a brand consultancy. Let's see how much we can zoom in on here. The one thing I did do is make this comically large cursor so that I can point things out a little bit better. You can see the website has their own cursor and it's kind of messing up with it, but that's okay. So we're going to be looking at this rebrand or this refresh of Govino. Govino is shatterproof glassware, and they have this little divot in the glasses. That's basically their, if they're presenting this on Shark Tank, that's what they would be selling to the sharks, is this little dent that's in the glassware, which cool. It's definitely unique. Just going to point out Design Week outline newsletter. Rob Alderson, the editor of Design Week, he puts this out, I think, almost daily, if not daily, multiple times a week. But I get a lot of good leads from here, and so I want to give Rob and Design Week, at least the newsletter, a quick shout out, because that's where I found this article. So let's go ahead and look at Govino, and I'll get into a little more detail than a little bit more detail about the typography in a second. So let's look at the Redscout webpage first, because I think that it does a best job of showcasing what I want to show you here. We're not going to go too heavy on the branding itself today. Let's see if we can zoom this out a little bit. What I want to do is just look at this here, because this is the original 2008 branding. Presumably, the brand was created in 2008, so I think that this packaging here is the packaging that we would have seen in 2008. And it looks very 2008, right? At least it looks like 2008 to 2000, like, I don't know, 13 maybe? I remember designs like this being really popular when I was in design school, which was like 2010 to 2014, or 2011. I'm forgetting here. Doesn't matter. The point is, I remember seeing packaging like this when I was in school and when I was first started like really paying attention to design. And there was a lot of that minimalist line work, illustration, line art type of illustrations. You can see all of the all caps description over here on the side, which just seems crazy in 2025. And then you can see the Govino logo here that seems very techy, right? Like it seems very, I don't know, that almost seems even more dated than 2008. But yeah, all of this sort of feels of an era. And now the rebrand or this updated packaging, I'm not going to give a huge opinion on, whether I think this is the right move or not. I think that it is a good improvement over the other one in the sense of like bringing it into the modern time. But I do think that this looks very similar to a lot of branding that we've looked at even in the last few months on this channel. I love a type-driven brand. You know, I love typography. That's why we're here. I am very enthusiastic about typography, and I assume most of you are as well. But when we look at this, it doesn't look entirely unique. The one thing I will say is maybe within like the stemware, glassware space, maybe this is super unique. And if we go down, we can see how they're using it on a few other touch points and stuff, but it's mostly on packaging. You know, if you're buying stemware or glassware, you're gonna be getting on the packaging. One thing that I had my initial reaction with this was like, man, stick with the color, keep the red, have like one thing. And that's a very common complaint that I have about these brands is that they don't own a color. But I think that the reason you might not do that here with Govino is if you had all of the packages sitting on the shelves and then you had all these different glasses, the glasses don't necessarily play as big of a character or a big of a role as, oh, look, they're still using the line art there. That's interesting. They don't necessarily play as big of a role as the typography and the color does. So if you're selling these 5 different glasses right here, and then they were all packaged in this red, you would know that it's all the same brand, but at the glance of an eye, you might think like, oh, it's just a huge display of the exact same glasses, and you might not notice that it's actually 5 different ones. So you can see if we zoom in, maybe we can zoom in just even a little more. So if we zoom in even a little more on this, you can see the SKU on here. They're, rather than having like a SKU number, they're using SKU like little color swatches. And so that's how you would differentiate which glass belonged with which color. And I think that's pretty cool. So while I would prefer that Govino could own a color in the marketplace, I think owning that that little divot in the glass is one thing, and then like they have a patent on it. I'm sure there's been some copycats, but owning that little divot and then also owning this package design in a general with the big typography, these like two-tone inverted type of thing. Like someone could easily copy this, but I think if you copied this too closely and you copied that little divot, you're really getting into territory where you could be looking at a lawsuit. But typography looks really nice. I love that it's type driven. Redscout doesn't specifically state what typeface were used. So what I did, I went to the Govino website, used my favorite extension here. It is just called What Font. And we can click on this one, and we can click on this one, and we can see that the main typeface they're using is Integral, and that is by Connery Fagan. We're going to come back to this in a second. The supporting typeface is actually monospaced, and it is Azaret Mono, and that's going to be by Displaay Type. We're going to come back to them a little bit later when we get to the new releases, but I thought it was interesting that these are super accessible typefaces. And then they did do a little bit of customization on this Integral by Connery Fagan. But yeah, you can see that they're using both of these on the website. So Azaret Mono by Display, you can just pick this up on Google Fonts. It's got a SIL open font license on it. You can just go pick this up for free, download it, do whatever you want with it. You'd have to look at the license in terms of like redistribution and stuff like that, but it's you can do almost anything with it. And then this one from Connery, great license on this one as well. Simple one where it's just desktop, web, app. Don't love the yearly subscription, but you know, the pricing and stuff like that seems reasonable. But if we go back to the Redscout page here and we scroll down a little bit till we get to the typography section, like I said, they don't specifically shout out what font that they're using here, but here, if we look at this G right here, ooh, they got it really big, don't they? If we look at this, give it a second to reload here and we'll be able to see what they're doing. So there's the typical Connery designed Integral right here. And then what they're doing is rounding off some of these corners. And they're shortening that. Yeah, they're really customizing. They're kind of stretching out some of the N. They're shortening that, what would you even call that? That inner sort of crossbar on the G there inside the counter probably helps make it a little more open as opposed to this one here, which is really going deep inside. And I know that these are different weights, but so yeah, you can see what they're doing with the integral, just a little bit of customization on there to get it a little more unique. But then on the website itself, you can go back and you can use the default integral and it's going to feel branded. I really thought that it was interesting that they're going with that the monospace font for the supporting typeface, but it looks really nice. It's a nice contrast. So that is Govino by Redscout. Next one we're going to pull up here is AirAisa, and this one's by hrftype. I wasn't having much luck with this hrftype website. As you can see, it's not really wanting to play nice. So we're going to pull this up on Instagram instead. And this is going to be another quick one. We're just going to look at this real quick. But I want to point out this one because I think that it's interesting. I think it's interesting that we're seeing more and more companies have bespoke fonts, having their own typeface. So yeah, you can go pull integral you can go purchase integral, you can customize it for the logo, but then you're still using integral for the rest of it. I think for 99% of companies, that's fine. But if you're an airline, maybe you want to have your own typeface, and that's what they want to do here. I'm not sure if they're starting with something, if they've got a starting point here that they're working with, because you can see that they're kind of cutting off some of these. They're changing the angle on some of these glyphs, and the logic behind that in the interview that I read right here on Marketing Interactive with hrftype is that they wanted to do like the taking off, like a plane taking off. So they had that sort of incline to it. But yeah, I mean, this isn't like this typeface isn't going to blow your mind or anything. But I think that the italic version is very nice. Let me go ahead and pull it up because I do have some specimens for you we can look at. Here we go. Let's look at these specimens here, and we can see a little bit more. These are off of the hrftype website, but we don't have. The website just isn't coming up for me right now, but you can see some of the italic here, and it looks really nice. It's got a little bit more character to it, quite a bit more character to it than the regular sans serif does. So I think that's really nice. What I think is most nice about this, though, is that just we're continuing to see companies invest in typography, which is great for the industry, great for type lovers, great for typographers, and particularly for type designers and foundries. The last note that I'll make here is that AirAisa Sans was created by hrftype for AirAisa, and these are both Malaysian companies. The thing that AirAisa pointed out was that they did want to have like a hometown designer work on this, basically, which I think is a great idea. And I think anytime you can build into that backstory and have the emotional connection, it's a great way to approach type design, typography in general. So let's move on to the new releases. The first one that I have here is on Future Fonts. I'm not sure if I'm going to say this name right, but I'm going to do my best. This is Spizh, I think. Let's pull up his Instagram real quick right here. Here's his Instagram. It's just Spizh. Spizh is how I'm going to say it. I'm probably saying that wrong. He is from Kiev, Ukraine. And the typeface we're going to look at is right here. This is a TDC 71 award winner for excellence or something like that. But you can see it right there. And you kind of get an idea of what's going on here, right? It's this modular construction. Let me go ahead and read it from the Future Fonts website, but you can see the specimen right here. I'm going to read his description from the Future Fonts website because I think that's the most objective way to do this. And as with any Future Fonts, they start out as like kind of like a beta fonts. It's in progress. You can see this is version 0.1. And I'll get into a little bit more detail on that in a second. But if you want to read along with me, we're right here. I tried to make it as big as possible without breaking the page. Let's see what happens if we really break it. We can kind of get it pretty big. I'm not sure how to say this either. Bibubator is how I'm going to go with it. Bibubator is a typeface that balances brutal industrial structures with a sense of playful softness, capturing a duality that is also echoed in its name. Originally developed as a graduation project at the Type Media course, it follows the tradition of many projects from this program by including a hidden twist. In this case, a physical wooden construction set conceived as a conceptual extension of the typeface. So here we can see this right here. I think actually the best way to look at this is with the PDF specimen. So I'm just going to pull this up so we can check this out real quick. Let's see if it loads. There it kind of goes. Looks like my PDF's a little broken here. But you can see the shapes right here. We saw them a little bit on Instagram. So these are the wooden shapes. It's very modular. And what he's done is, you know, screwed these together and managed to make a really very nice typeface. Let me go ahead and continue with future fonts here. The design is rooted in reflections of the childhood within the post-Soviet industrial environment of the 1990s, particularly in Kiev. It investigates how early experiences shape aesthetic sensibilities, especially during the transition from socialist system to an open economy and the emergence of an independent Ukraine exposed to Western culture and markets. Okay, so we're getting an idea of what's going on here, right? He's got this 1990s Ukrainian toy-inspired typeface, and it looks really cool. It's clearly a display type, right? But when we pull up the PDF specimen, I was actually shocked at how readable this typeface is at the regular size. Not just legible, but like actually readable. Let's go ahead and look at all three weights. So it does come in regular, bold, and black. And he mentions that he might put out a color version of it, like a color version of it based off of these here, off of these like original shapes. So that could be cool. I'm not one that's like puts too much weight in color fonts. I see the potential, but since they're like barely supported right now, I don't get too excited about it. I'd be more excited about a variable font that, you know, you could create sizes in between these. I think that would be much more interesting to me than a color font, but that's, you know, just my perspective on it. So right now it's coming in three weights: regular, bold, and black. And it actually has way more glyphs than I would expect. And it's much more readable than I would expect. So here's the full glyph set. I know that it's not huge, but you do have all these accents and stuff like that. So this is going to give you decent language support. You got a solid amount of punctuation here. You even got some little arrows and stuff like that. But look, even at these small sizes, look how readable this is. Like not just legible, but like actually readable. I feel like I could read a full article in a magazine with this. I don't know that I want to read a book, but I could read like an article on a web page. I could read a magazine if I owned a physical magazine. Like I could read more than just a headline with this, which is really interesting because of how unique and how modular this is. You know, you wouldn't look at this black right here and think that it's going to be as legible. Then you get down to the bold, and then you get down to the regular, and the regular at these small sizes, you wouldn't even know that it had all of this character in it. I think that's really, really cool. And it's very impressive. So let's pull this back up on future fonts. The typeface, let's go ahead and get back to a reasonable size here. The typeface has the great general future fonts license. Sometimes these are adapted, but it's got desktop, web, and app support. $55, you know, for the base for like one employee. But the best part about future fonts is that with any updates, you're going to get those for free. So you come down here and he'll give you, you know, version history and stuff. They'll have, sometimes you'll have like little blurbs about what they expect to come in the next version. And then it'll always have the history of what has happened in the past. So like I said, $55, great, great price, great license on this, very reasonable. And I think that it's shocking how well the regular weight of this works in body copy. Next up, we have another display typeface. This one is from Display. We said we were going to talk about Display again. I'm going to pop back and forth between this newsletter right here because it really gives a lot of background on it, and the actual typeface. And then I've also got it loaded up here in Affinity Publisher. So we're going to be jumping around a little bit, but hopefully I can give you an accurate portrayal of, or accurate demonstration of what's going on here with this typeface, because it's really neat. And it's another one where I don't love the license, but I do really appreciate the type design, and a license can always change, a type design can't really. So let's go ahead and dig into this one. I'm going to start with the newsletter, like I said, because this originally came from right there. And this is a GIF, so we only have so much control over it. You can see right there, Carl Coxx. He is a legendary, right here. Let's go ahead and read it. Coxx typeface is named after the British techno house legend DJ Carl Coxx. Back in 2000, Merrick, and that's referring to Merrick Pistora right here. Hope I'm saying these names right. I didn't ask anyone how to say them. Merrick designed a poster for Carl's Prague show where he used Coxx. Back then it was just called Coxx with one X. Now it's called Coxx with two. But yeah, it's inspired by Carl Coxx here. It was originally a design that he had created in school and then pulled it out of the drawer in 2000 to make these posters for Carl Coxx. And added some gaps here and stuff that were said to be inspired by the gap in Carl's teeth there, if you can see that whenever it flashes on the screen. So really cool backstory. Basically what happened here is the Display Type Foundry. Colleague here, David, again, another name I'm probably going to say incorrectly, David Rarisha? David at the Display Type Foundry worked alongside Merrick here to turn this into a full typeface, 25 years later. So King of Techno, this is Carl Coxx, and this is Coxx by Display. We're going to go ahead and scroll through this, and you can see what's going on here. This comes in 14 styles total. Here we go, right here. There is standard and there is gaps, and I will show you how this all works because it's a variable font and it's super cool. It might seem simple at first glance, but they created this without any Beziers. There are no Beziers in this at all. There's actually a great quote at the end of this newsletter that I'm going to read for you. It says, David says, looks easy, the Coxx type, right? No handles, no curves, easy job. Yeah, no, it was fucking hell. Every letter module had to be positioned perfectly, gaps managed, more weights added, plus a filled version, all packed into one variable font. If nobody uses the variable feature, I swear I'll lose my mind. So, yeah. A typical typeface, I'm sure many of you are aware, if not, is created using Bezier curves in a type design application like Glyphs or Font Lab or what else is there? Roboto, what is it called? Roboto font? I'm losing my mind here. Anyway, or you could even make it in, like Affinity or Adobe and then throw it into, have a font engineer work on it for you and get everything working. So they did this without any Bezier curves at all, which is crazy. That means they're just moving these shapes around. I would assume they're still using, yeah, I mean, it has to be vector, but it just means there's going to be all corners on this. So all these here are, it's just all straight lines, which is crazy, but it's super cool. The one thing I would say about this is that similar to, it does have some open type features here, similar to what we talked about when we went over the grid systems book, these type of limitations, and we just saw this 2 seconds ago with Bibubator, these limitations can really lead to some very interesting and creative outcomes. People want to have all the freedom in the world. They want to be able to use all their Bezier curves. 618 glyphs here, by the way. But when they have those limitations, it can force you to do something, beyond what you might have thought you were capable of. So this is Coxx, subscribe. This is Coxx, and you can see the two variable axes up here. We've got weight, which is very nice. We see that all the time, but a little bit of extra work here since we're not working with variable or with Bezier curves. I think that looks really nice. The transitions are going to be able to work great if anybody decides to animate this. The gaps are what I was more impressed with though, because I thought the gaps would just be a binary, like turn them on, turn them off. No, the gaps for Coxx by Display are actually, let's go ahead and zoom in on this even more. Sorry, my scroll wheel's a little broken right now. So if we look at the gaps here, they actually can be controlled as well. So I think people are going to be able to do some really cool stuff with this in terms of the variable features. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Let's see if we can get this back a bit fully on the screen there. But yeah, that's Coxx. It's got way more glyphs than I would have expected. 618 glyphs. You know, it's got 14 styles. We looked at that. 7 with the gaps, 7 without the gaps. I did mention the price, so I did mention the license. So let's go ahead and look at that. It does have free trial, so that's what I'm using. That's what we're looking at right now is the trial. And I think I made a note that it is actually the full font trial. So it's not just like a trial license. Like some of the trial fonts I'm going to show you today only have like uppercase and lowercase, no numbers, no bells and whistles at all, not even punctuation. So Display Foundry, they do give you that benefit of like really being able to test out the font. I'm going to go the opposite direction now and tell you something that I don't love about it, and that is this licensing. I understand they're going to do it by seat. Okay, everybody does that these days. I don't love it, but I kind of get it. They're trying to squeeze more money out of the bigger players and then make it more affordable for smaller players, like me with like a one-person shop. Love the discounts. That's nice as well. Adding your name to it for an extra 10% is silly. Anybody that does that, in my opinion, you're just burning money. What I don't love is that the desktop license is basically worthless on here. So when you get to the basic typeface, pick it out, $232 for desktop. That is or 232 euros per the desktop. That is incredibly reasonable in my opinion for 14 weights or 14 styles. A variable font. We looked at it. It's got a lot of glyphs. It's got anything that you could want this display type to do. The problem for me is that I can't use this on YouTube, so I got to pay for video. I can't use this for a logo, so I got to pay for that. I can't use this on social media, so I got to pay for that. So then we go from that 232, which feels real reasonable, up to 1,261 euros. At that point, if you're going to be using it for all these things, maybe you want it on your website. Now you're looking like 1,500. Might as well just get the unlimited. Now we're up to like 2,000. So I have no problem with capitalism. You make a product and sell it for what people will pay. But I just wish, and this is something I harp on this channel a lot, I wish the licensing was simpler. But I do think this is a nice, fun typeface. Love the backstory. Love that this is like a late 90s, early 2000s, like, Y2K era typeface that rose from the dead. And I think it's a very nice display typeface. I just don't love the licensing on it. I'm going to pop open a bunch of windows here. I apologize for the flashbangs. This is another one from Future Fonts. This is coming out. This is from, I didn't ask how to say his name either, but I did have a brief interaction with him that I will get to. This is Fulcrum, available on Future Fonts, just released. Again, we see great license here. Teo Tuominen. I apologize. I'm not sure if it's Teo or Teo. I'm going to say Teo. That'll be my, Americanized version of pronouncing his name. But let's go ahead and pull up his Instagram real quick, and I'll go ahead and read you. Well, let's read it on here because it's a little bit easier to read on Future Fonts, and then we'll get to the interaction that I had with him. Fulcrum is a flavorful sans serif with French roots and Scandinavian execution. The shapes have a familiar flair, but are drawn subtly enough for the typeface to remain solidly in the functional realm. A workhorse with a twist, if you will. The first iteration of the font comes in 4 weights, presenting the extremes thin and black with a more generally usable regular and bold in the middle. The ranges of weights will of course be expanded in future updates, as will the character set. Love to see it. At first glance, this seems like a pretty normal typeface, right? If we pull up the PDF specimen though, you'll get a much better look at what we're dealing with. You can see it's very I can definitely see how he's calling this a workhorse, because this is very legible, this is very readable, and it's got a very, very nice character to it. It's definitely not a neutral workhorse, but I can 100% see this being a workhorse. Then you get into some of the closer ups of this. You get into some of these like display type sizes, and you start to look at it and you're like, oh, look at those A's. Like, look at the T, even at this thin weight here, like you're getting some really cool shapes. The S is almost feels top heavy because it's so symmetrical. You just don't see R's created like this. It's very, very interesting. And I reached out to him on Instagram and asked, let's pull it back up here. And I asked him, let's go ahead and break the site and make this as big as possible. I asked him, this is looking great. Could you expand on what you mean by French roots and Scandinavian execution? Because for me, I didn't say this to him. For me, a lot of times when people say these types of things, it's just marketees. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Luckily, in this case, it does mean something. And Teo from Helsinki here, Teo gave us some insight into what this means, which I really did appreciate. He said, by that, I mean this is clearly influenced by antique olive and the French style of flamboyance, but I wanted to make it more sober and functional, hence the Scandinavian part. And I'm Finnish, so the Scandinavian part comes pretty naturally. Love the extra context, because I'm not someone who has every typeface memorized in their brain. I've definitely come across antique olive before, but it didn't immediately strike me as what would have influenced this. And I'm going to pull up the two and we'll get them side by side here in a second. I just want to showcase fonts in use here for a second, because anytime I want to see a typeface actually in use, I come here and check it. Antique olive is obviously an old enough typeface that we can hop on here and see all kinds of very interesting, fun uses of it. So I'm not going to hop into any of these in specifically, but I just wanted to point out that this is, the first two places I go. I'll go to Wikipedia, check to see how, when it was created, who made it, and then I go to fonts in use to see how people have used it historically. The next things I do is see if I have access to it, which I have Adobe Fonts, so I do have access to the URW Type Foundry version of it. We're going to pull that up here in a second. But there's also a version by Linotype available from Monotype as well. Let's look at these two in Affinity Publisher, and we'll see if his description fits the bill, and we'll see how much influence there really is. The top one here is Fulcrum Regular. Let's see if we can make this a little bigger even. The top one here is Fulcrum Regular, available on Future Fonts, and the bottom one there is Antique Olive Regular, available on Adobe Fonts. And you can see Antique Olive definitely has more character to it. It very much feels of an era. I didn't pay attention. Let's see when this was originally created. I think it said the 60s. 1962 to 66. Yeah, it feels very 60s, 70s, doesn't it? So Antique Olive, clearly we're getting a little bit of inspiration there, but we can also immediately start to see some differences. The first thing that I see is this tittle on the eye, and we'll see that even more so in the heavier weights. He does keep the curve, but he spreads it out a little bit more and makes it a little less obvious that it's like kind of punching the stem on the eye there down. This is Fulcrum and Antique Olive in bold, I believe. Yeah, so this is Fulcrum and Antique Olive compared in bold, because I think the bolder weights give you a little bit more character. Greetings from Brazil, says Lago Zero Silva. Boa tarde. It's 5:17 here. I think it's 5:17 for you as well. Thanks for watching, and thanks for the kind words. So Fulcrum here clearly takes inspiration from Antique Olive, but as we get into this heavier weight, you can really see Iago. Oh, sorry, Iago. Yeah, that makes more sense. Let's blame the font that's used there on YouTube. So we can see that the eye on these bolder, these heavier weights of Antique Olive really pushes down, and there's a ton of character there. If you wanted character, if you wanted a display font, I think the Antique Olive could be your better choice. Like if you really wanted that character out of it. But if you want something that's going to work a little bit more and have a dash of that antique olive character, I think Fulcrum's really going to fit the bill a lot better, because it does strike that balance between the workhorse. The other thing that it's got going for it is it's got this heavier black weight here. I'm going to pop back out of this. It's got this heavier black weight. Antique Olive doesn't have that. Antique Olive does have a condensed version, and then it does have this. They're calling this here compact, but it seems more like an expanded version to me. I don't know. I wouldn't have even known that this was part of the Antique Olive family. But yeah, so they do have that. But Fulcrum here just has the 4 weights. I think that this could become like a really, really solid workhorse if it got an italic version. That's the one thing that Antique Olive does have going for it. I'll show you, Kate, show you this one here. It has 1 italic weight, so it's got light, regular italic, medium, bold. The regular italic, I would love to see Teo turn this Fulcrum into an italic weight too, and then I think you get into the territory where you're really, really working with more of a workhorse typeface. But for $60, I think this could be a really interesting investment into a workhorse typeface that might pay off pretty well for you later on down the road, especially if this does end up getting some italics. That's speculation on my part. He doesn't say anything about italics here, so buyer beware. But I like the backstory. I like his explanation here that he gave me on Instagram. And, you know, it's always great to support independent type foundries, especially ones that have great licensing. You can, you know, we can compare this to the typeface we just looked at Display 2 seconds ago, and we can see we're dealing with a whole different beast here where you can really do a lot with this that you just can't with some of these larger foundries. So I really like this. It's just got the 4 static weights right now. And you can test out the trial though. Some future fonts let you test out trials. This one you can test out the trial. So test it out, see what you think. And then, you know, if it's worth buying for you, you'll get all those future updates. Let's look at another workhorse. This one here is Europa Prima. I think it's Europa Prima. It might be Prima, but I'm going to go with Prima. Let's go ahead and go back here. Iago, I'm actually living in Brazil right now as well. I'm from the US, if you can't tell by my accent, but I'm in Brazil too. So we're going to call this Europa Prima. I'm going to use my Brazilian accent rather than, or I mean my Portuguese accent rather than saying Prima. But this came out of the newsletter here. I wanted to showcase this specimen right here. Everyone knows that I'm a sucker for type specimens. And I love this, you know, it looks like a Universal Studios inspired graphic here combined with maybe like an Apple glass word mark on there. But there's a good reason for the world on there, and that is because this workhorse comes in 3 different scripts, or it supports 3 different scripts. So it's going to support, let's go ahead and zoom down. Let's go ahead and scroll down. We'll come back up. This is going to support Greek, Cyrillic, and Latin. So compared to another workhorse, you know, like Helvetica or something like that, well, we do have Helveticas that, versions of Helvetica that are going to support these as well. But compared to some other workhorses that we've seen lately, they might not necessarily have the language support that this one does. So that's the one standout that I think production type here is going for. Yeah, we don't really need to look at these things. Let's go ahead and get rid of those. We can see this right here. So this one's going to come in, they're calling this a European grotesque. I would consider this, you know, to be a Swiss style, but Swiss grotesque. But we'll get to that in a second. It does support Latin, Greek, and Cyrillic. It has a huge amount of glyphs, 962. Let's go ahead and pull up. Now let's go ahead and scroll through this first. I'm always getting ahead of myself here. No problem, Iago. So I'm replying to Iago here if you're watching in the future. Don't want to mess you up while you're talking types, but what the what are you doing in Brazil? I married a Brazilian, so we're living in Brazil right now. But I do plan to going back to Las Vegas when we get her visa and stuff sorted out. But yeah, the family, I moved here a year ago, and I'm living here with my Brazilian wife. So that's what I'm doing here. But yeah, so we can see here what this is. You can see right away. This feels very Swiss. It feels very familiar. Um, and we can start to see some of the Cyrillic and stuff like that. Let me reply to Iago here, and then we'll pull up the PDF specimen. Iago says, and if you are here, what do you think about Fabio Haag? Let me see what that is. Oh, typefaces. I will have to do some research and get back to you on that. I'm not familiar with Fabio Haag, if I'm even saying that correctly, but I'm interested in learning more for sure. Thank you for putting this on my radar. I will report back next week, Iago. If you tune in or you catch the replay next week, I will report back with my thoughts on this. And feel free to shout out any other Brazilian type foundries. I've come across a few that we've covered on the channel, but if you got some other favorites, put them on my radar. Let's pull up the PDF of this though, because I think it does a decent job, and then we'll look at this in Affinity Publisher like we did with all the others. So like I said, we've got all the basic weights here. This is the definitive workhorse. 962 glyphs. We're covering 3 different scripts. The thing that I thought was most interesting here, let me get this to fill the page here. We've got a lot of dingbats, a lot of symbols. I particularly enjoyed the what would you even call it? The Roman numerals here. They got the manacles, they got stuff like that. We've seen these little flags and shapes and stuff, but the Roman numerals I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, lots of support there. Let's pull this up and we can compare how it might look to some other European typefaces. Sounds good, Iago. I look forward to giving my thoughts next week. So this is Europa Prima. I did pull up Europa by Europa Type because I wanted to see if there was any relation. No relation whatsoever, other than being sans serifs. But you can see, if we looked at them up close, we would have seen pretty quickly. They share a common name, but they don't share much other than that. So let's look at a typeface that it does share commonality with. And we looked at this last week too with a lot of the workhorse sans serif typefaces we were looking at last week. This is Helvetica New. It's kind of like the default, back, I don't know, for decades, this has been a default, as soon as it was created, basically, as soon as it superseded Helvetica New just became, that neutral typeface that we saw everywhere. And as we can see, it's not super different from Europa Prima. I would say that it's probably even closer than any of them that we looked at last week, but there are some differences that I think we can look at. Whenever I see Helvetica, I always see, the A first. That's, how I first would recognize Helvetica A, and then you've got these horizontal cuts on the S here. If we pull up the A and S here, we can see the A is a little bit different. It does have that curve on the top part there, but then the counter down here has a little bit of more of a humanist shape to it. It kind of goes straight. So that's kind of interesting. The S has more open counters, so it's going to be a little bit more legible. That's one of the downsides of Helvetica New, any of these ones with the horizontal cuts on the counters. So like the C right here, at small sizes, that would be pretty tough. Sometimes that could look like an O. And we're much more concerned with legibility now than we used to be. So you can see the open counters on the C here. So I do think the upgrade with Europa Prima is going to be some of these legibility features that they built into it. But if you've already got Helvetica New, I think Europa Prima could be a tough sell. The one thing Europa Prima does have going for it is the extra scripts, like I said, but Helvetica New World is going to have those, and that's also available in Adobe fonts. So you'd really have to just not want to be in that monotype Adobe, what would you even call it? World. And this is the reason I say that. because as much as I love this typeface, and I think my initial reaction is like, man, that could be a great alternative, 480 euros for the whole family. It's not variable, which I think could be a big seller, but you get here and you've got your license, and this seems like it's always a deal breaker for me. We get to the license and we've got desktop. Okay, cool, 480, I get it. It's a workhorse. You throw it on the web, you do all these other things, but it doesn't include social media. And then you scroll down a little bit further. I don't know, I'm not sure if we'll break the website by zooming in. You scroll in a little bit further and you actually have separate license for the logo, for audio and visual film, for advertising, for online advertising, for packaging, for, like you want to put this in a PowerPoint, you have to call and get a quote to see how much it's going to cost you. License like this, like really feel like they just don't even want you to use the font. I don't like it's like they want you to buy it and then never actually use it. So that's a big red flag for me. Maybe it's not for you, but Europa Prima, I think it looks really nice. And it could be an alternative to like the typical Helvetica and stuff like that we're used to. It does have these nice, legibility features, and it's got the nice scripts and stuff. But when it comes to a license like that, compared to just picking this up on Adobe fonts, I know that's a subscription, but like, you can use it everywhere in the world. Anything you want to do with it, you can do with it almost. But yeah, so that's the only downside I would say to the Europa Prima. Let's look at Statius. This is by Feliciano Type. This is another independent type foundry, and I got a few different things I'm going to pop up on the screen for you. Get rid of that one. This is, oops, that's what we're going to look at next week. Let me go ahead and bookmark that so I don't forget, and then we'll close it. This is Statius by Feliciano Type, and I'm going to pull up the PDF on this one as well because I think that it does a good job of showing this off a little bit better. But just going to showcase the specimens here on Instagram real quick. This is Feliciano Type on Instagram. And let's go ahead and read the description because I think that it's brief and gets to the point pretty quickly. Statius is obviously Albertus, reinterpreted through a contemporary and fresh approach. However, in many senses, it is also very different from Albertus. Statius began as an attempt to design something like Albertus from memory, and the first thing to notice is that I got rid of some of the most characteristic letters that make Albertus so memorable. Most of all, the lowercase a, but also the uppercase M and R. Secondly, there's an italic that was drawn independently from the Roman counterpart that includes a small set of swash capitals inspired by Wolf's work. Other than that, there is also a different treatment of the contrast and proportions. Statius comes in 6 weights with matching italics and a large character set. I would push back a little bit on the large character set because from what I can tell, in the trial anyway, it is 426. Definitely not a small character set, but I wouldn't call that large. But let's go ahead and get right to the comparison this time. And I think that we can see what's going on here. So Albertus is on the bottom, Statius is on the top. And right away you can see some of the inspiration, but this is me. These are generally me typing out loud. But we can see already the difference between the two. Clearly we're seeing some inspiration, but similar to what we saw earlier with Fulcrum by Teo when he was taking that from, what was he taking that from? Fulcrum when he was taking that from Antique Olive. I think Statius does a really good job here of reinterpreting Albertus and making it much more usable, much more of a workhorse than what you would ever be able to achieve from this. So let me go ahead and break out of this full screen real quick so I can show you. This has all of the different weights here. And then Albertus Pro, this is from Monotype, just has the 3 weights. So it's just got light, regular, and italic. And you can see the color on it's really, really off. It's very uneven. You wouldn't be able to read that. Whereas Statius, it just looks amazing in my opinion. Let me go ahead and pull up this specimen from Statius, and you can see even more how like pleasant this is to read. This is going to be the regular. No, that's light and light italic. This is going to be, this is going to be regular. This is going to be bold. But then we get into, let me pull this back out. Goodness. We can see this does have a lot of character. You know, it still retains a lot of character similar to Albertus, but it really does do a great job of making this so much more legible when we get into these regular weight sizes. I apologize for the jumping back and forth here, but I think the Feliciano type has done a great job here of taking something that just wouldn't really be usable at all, in my opinion, other than, you know, some unique display type cases, and turned it into more or less, you know, a new version of it that's a little more sober and a little more usable, but still has a ton of character. And it's got a great license on it. Just small, medium, large. Love to see it. It includes print and web. You know, you just pick, if you're a small business, to get the whole family, it's going to be 400 euros, medium, 800, large, 1200. Like it just goes up incrementally, you know. It's really easy to understand. If you just want one weight, I think they're like 50, 150, and 100. And it gives you everything, you know, print and web. No, none of this like break it out. Let's do an app. Let's do a logo. Let's do a video. Let's do social media. Like super simple license. So I think this is a really good one. And I think that's genuinely a great alternative to Albertus. Albertus, like I note here when I was talking to myself, like it really does have some charm to it, but it's just not going to play well. Let's look at this before we move on real quick. These are the changes that Feliciano type did made. I'm not sure if it's I didn't check to see who Feliciano type is. But they said that they changed the A, the M, and the R. Just wanted to point these out. You can see how much more calligraphic the A is in Albertus, and then the M, rather than being straight up and down. And then the R, changed that leg a little bit on there. And then I just wanted to point out this one. The italics actually have some swashes, so we can turn this on and off, obviously. Maybe, let me see where I do it. I got it. I swear I got it. There's the default italic. Here's the swash version. So you're just going to be getting a lot more out of Statius from Feliciano type than you would be getting from Albertus, from monotype. Let's move on because I do have quite a bit more I want to get to. We've got one more new font. This one is Baker's from TypeType. And I'm just going to pop all these up again. So this is going to be a display typeface. Been seeing quite a few of those today. This was the email. I love the specimens. TypeType does, I think, the best job of specimens. So I'm actually going to pull up their Behance profile here and we'll look at that. But you can see they do an incredible job with specimens. And this is a typeface that I wasn't expecting to be like as cozy as it is. You know, sometimes the typeface will be named something like Baker's, and then it doesn't really feel like a warm bakery. It doesn't really feel like the name suggests it would. But this one really does. And you can see here, huge language support, 230 languages. I guess I should say solid language support, 230 languages. We've seen some of them that support 500 languages. They just go crazy. But a lot of glyphs here. Let me check my notes. 934 glyphs. This has 14 styles. It's a variable font. It's got 33 open type features. We'll look at some of those here in a second. And then you can purchase it from the Foundry. Oh, they've got it right here in the specimen, so you can see some of these. So superscripts, inferiors, numerators, dominators, ordinals, case sensitive punctuation. A lot of cool stuff going on here, a lot of really useful stuff going on. And then they've got the stylistic sets on here for different language support and stuff like that in terms of accents and ligatures. And yeah, I just really think that they knocked it out of the park. This is another one where I don't love the license. I think that's a kind of problem. The bigger the Foundry gets, the less I like the license, but I really love this typeface. And if you sign up for the beta, they have a beta program. TypeType does. 90% sure that's what I'm thinking of. let me pull up the specimen because I know I stuck it on the specimen if it is. No, this isn't the one that has the beta program. I apologize. But they do have free trials. So I have the trial font right here. Let's just go ahead and look at this since I already jumped in here. This is the trial version of TTBakers. And let me check the glyphs. I'm not sure if this gives us, yeah, it looks like we pretty much got the full font here. So it's not going to be, like a pared down version, or is that pared down? I don't know. It looks like we're getting a lot of glyphs here. So I'm going to go ahead and call this as pretty close to the full type family. So this is TTBakers. It really just does look super cozy. There's not really much more to say about it. Like, it's variable, so I can showcase you that real quick. Let me go ahead and show you. So this is variable. It's got 2 axes. It's got weight and slant. And like we saw with the gaps earlier, the slant isn't just a binary on or off. So we're messing with the weight right now, obviously. Make this even bigger. So we're messing with the weight right now. You put that wherever you want. Looks nice. The screen tearing is just on my end. That's not anything wrong with the font. But the slant is variable. So it's got an axis on there. It's not just turn it on, turn it off for italics. You can actually animate this if you wanted to animate the italics, which I think is, it has moderate utility, but it is much more useful than a binary on or off, and it takes much more work from TypeType to do this. So really like this typeface. There's not a ton to say about it. It's a display typeface, so what you see is what you get. But it's a really, really, really well designed one, with a license that isn't the worst by any means. You pay once right here, you get the desktop for $160. Like, that's incredible value. If you could really use the desktop license for everything that I think a desktop license should be able to use for, I think I should be able to use it in digital ads, and I should be able to use it in video. I'm fine with not being able to use it in an app and stuff like that, but maybe I'm being nitpicky on this one. I'm going to give them I'm going to give TypeType a pass this time. I don't love that it's all broken down like this, but I kind of get it. And I do think that 160 for the base price is pretty reasonable. It is on sale for 30% off right now. But yeah, I wish the license was a little bit better, but it's definitely much better than what we saw from Display a little bit ago. So TTBakers, I know I didn't spend a ton of time on this one. Definitely go check out their Behance. I'll link this afterwards. And then we'll zoom through this real quick. This is their PDF specimen, and maybe they're doing a better job of showcasing it than I did in Affinity Publisher, but you can see the variable right there. The one thing I wanted to show you real quick is the ligatures, because I think they look amazing. Here we go. Look at those. I don't know. I would love to see this in the bolder weight and like the heavier weight, because I think these ligatures and stuff, I don't even know what some of these are because I don't I don't use these other scripts, but I don't know. There's something so satisfying about TTBakers for me. But let's go ahead and move on. Next up, we have an update, and this one's from Pangram, and it's with Mori. I'm actually going to pull up their newsletter because they don't showcase too much. Shoot, I'm going to have to pull it up from my email. Give me 1 second. Go ahead and look at this beautiful specimen while I pull this up in my email real quick. Oh, no. I do have the specimens. I have them as PNGs. Let me open these. Okay, so this is what's changed. I'll go ahead and scroll through. We can see what it is. Another workhorse. This is Mori. They're saying that it has Japanese inspiration. And that's one of the things that I'm going to look at today, because the typeface that we looked at last week also, or 2 weeks ago, from Pangram also claimed to have Japanese inspiration. So I'll give you a look at this real quick. Then we'll pull up what changed in version 2, and then we'll compare this to Kyoto, which was the Japanese-inspired serif typeface from a couple of weeks ago. So since this is an update, I'm not going to go super in depth with this like I would with a new typeface. I think we're getting the idea of what's going on here though, right? So let me pull up these specimens real quick. So this is what's changed. They added some weights to it. Before we had the pink ones, now we have the pink and the violet navy color here. So they've added thin italic, heavy, black, and their italic versions. I think probably more importantly is that they have extended a bunch of stuff. So refined the curves. That's always nice. Extended the weight range. We just saw that. They added some languages. So they included Cyrillic in this one. It's got 97 languages, 200 new glyphs. So it's got 804 total glyphs. And then they added the classic size diacritics here. So you can see you got your choice between the two diacritics there. Speaking English, I don't use diacritics too much, but living in Brazil, I see them often. So maybe people are particular about those. But yeah, this is a really, cool workhorse. Like I said, I'm not going to get into all of it right now. I just wanted to show it. And what I found was more interesting was that the last two typefaces that Pangram has highlighted have both claimed to be inspired by Japanese design. So I wanted to pull them up and see how they work together, see if they worked well together, see if they were designed to be working well together or not. I don't think that they actually are meant to work together, but I do think they kind of work together. Kyoto has that problem where the color is a little bit off. There are heavy spots, and maybe that's a charming thing to you. Like if I zoom out a little bit, you can kind of see this one here. You can kind of see how there are dark, really, really dark spots in Kyoto. And maybe that doesn't matter to you. That might be, some of the charm for it. But I just set them side by side so we can kind of compare them and see how they work together. Two fonts that are supposed to be inspired by Japanese design by Pangram. Let's see how they look. Kyoto's on the top. This is the one that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And Mori is the one that just got updated. I think that these could work pretty well in this type of setup. And then I think they could also work pretty well in the opposite way. I do think Kyoto has a little bit more character to it, so it probably works better as the headlines. But even when you interchange them, like this here is Kyoto and Mori both like side by side, Pangram, in the two different fonts. You could read this without problem. Like they look fine together. And I think that if you really wanted two fonts from Pangram that were both inspired by Japanese design, maybe this fits the bill for you. It does have 22 total weights, Roman italic, 804 glyphs. It's variable. It's going to have everything you want in a workhorse, not workforce. Let's look at some other typefaces. These two that we're going to talk about now are upcoming typefaces. They're not out yet. Trying to pull up the specimen now. So I know you're just looking at the Mori right here, but I swear I'm working on something in the background. These two here are from Big Fog Foundry, and we got a preview of these a few weeks ago. And initially we talked about this is Rithum. Initially we talked about this as being essentially a revival of Delacroix Beta. He sent out a newsletter this week talking about how he's no longer considering this to be a revival, and he's actually going to start taking more inspiration from Bauhaus and Art Deco. And I think that's cool. Let me just go ahead and pull up Delacroix for you real quick so we can see what that looks like. Delacroix Beta. Because we did look at this last time, so there it is. Which one do we want to look at? Let's look at the Sam Cooke. So we can see it here. If we zoom in, where it says this is Sam Cooke. That's what he was kind of basing it on before. And now it's still pretty similar to that, but you can see he's really starting to pull away from what the typeface was before. He's built in some alternates. He's still got the curves and stuff, but he's also giving you a more sober version of it. So I think it's interesting to see the progression of this. I like when designers work out loud. I find it very interesting because I'm not good at working out loud. I like to work in private and then, showcase my stuff once I'm done. But I am grateful of Big Fog Foundry that they are doing it out loud. The next one that I wanted to give a shout out to is Signal Foundry, and Signal Foundry is Max Phillips. So if you're looking on Adobe fonts, you're going to be looking for Max Phillips. But if you wanted to find Signal in general. It's going to be Signal Type Foundry. And like I said, I'll have all of this linked in the description after the live stream. I apologize that it's not in there right now. I just kind of ran out of time once again. But he put out an email with this in the inside of it, just saying, giving a small preview saying coming soonish. I emailed him and I said, can we have anything else at all on this? Can I have any preview to show people on the next Typography News? And thankfully, Max gave us a little bit more of a preview. Let me go ahead and open these up. If you don't know Max Phillips, if you don't know Signal, I'm going to link a YouTube presentation that he did for type directors. Oh gosh, no, not type directors. I'm going to link a presentation in the description after the live stream that he did a few years ago in 2019. That's really interesting. He's an American New Yorker that started a foundry and then moved to Ireland, and it's really cool to see his journey and see some of the things that he presents there. But this is the preview, exclusive preview of Milgram by Signal that is coming soonish. And he basically just gave me some screenshots of glyphs here, so we can see a little bit of it. It's going to be a rounded typeface, and I'm pretty excited about this. Let's look at his description real quick, and then we'll take a closer look at those previews. He says, "Here's something I've wanted to add to our library for a while: a rounded workhorse sans with open humanist apertures and a generous X height. I think the darkest styles have a Zaftig Oz Cooper quality, and the lightest weights look vaguely scientific, like letters engraved on a graduated beaker. The current plan is for 6 Roman weights." You can see those here. That's 6 Roman weights, with matching plus matching italics. Is this Signal the answer to Calibri? No, but thanks for asking. I'm calling it Milgram after Stanley Milgram, whose, I don't know how to say this word, eponymous experiments probed the behavior of ordinary people in totalitarian times. So he said, give a shout if you want a closer look sooner. So that's what I did. And he gave us these right here. And I do think that this really could be a great workhorse. It looks like this might be, trying to see, it looks like this is regular based on what I can see down here. So it's the regular weight. It looks like pretty bold though, so maybe not. Maybe this is the bold up here, and then this is a regular weight down here at the bottom. But you know, this is a preview. This is literally this is the source file that we're looking at right now. A screenshot of Milgram's version 0.13, straight from Max Phillips. So I think it's really cool that he gave us exclusive little access to this for Typography News, and I'm really excited to see what comes from this. If you're not familiar, let's just go ahead and look real quick. If you're not familiar with Signal Foundry, he's got some incredible type designs on here, some incredible people that he's worked with on here. Worked with Christie's. The story for that one is in the video that I'm going to link below. Interesting turn of events there, but you can see some of the typefaces that he's put out. He's got some trial fonts down here, and I'm a fan. If that's not coming through right now, I think that Max is a great designer. You can get a lot of his fonts on Adobe fonts. So I've got that here so you can kind of showcase. He is a big fan of manacles. So you're going to see these little hands in almost every font that he puts out. And even got one there in Vibro or Vibro. But yeah, so quick little preview that we got a sneak peek of for Milgram. And I appreciate Max Phillips from Signal Foundry for sharing that with us. Let's see what's next up. We got some fun ones coming up. So this is going to be Peglin. This is not traditionally what we talk about on this on Typography News. This is a typeface. This is a typeface that's available for purchase, but it is only available for purchase in wood. This is a letterpress typeface that you can get from McKellier. Let me see. I should have asked how to say this name. I'm going to pronounce it as McKellier, but I might be pronouncing it wrong. I know it's made by Mark McKellier. We can see that right here. But the thing that I thought was interesting about this, which it's such like a dumb thing, but it's also kind of amazing that it works, is that these are based off of clothespins. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. But yeah, so these are based off the clothespins, like the thing you use to hang up your laundry. And it created a really interesting pattern here. And yeah, I don't know. I find this really interesting. But what I think is most interesting about this is the fact that he's still doing, creating new typefaces and then releasing them as letterpress. And there's an example of it printed right there. And then the thing that you have to do with wood block printing, with letterpressing, is that you have to make the ligatures as little blocks yourself. Because if you had the W block and the A block and you purchase both of them, they're going to be spaced out really far apart, because these, you can't do the optical alignment and stuff like that you can in modern design programs. So he's gone ahead and made all of these kerning pairs, which is very thoughtful of him and very practical. I have no use for this, but I just love that it's still being made. And there's a lot of interesting typefaces and different wood letterpress stuff on this website. So again, this will be linked afterwards. If you want to check it out now, it is McKellier.com. But the typeface that we were looking at just right there was called Peglin and is based off of those clothespins, which I think is amazing. The main reason I wanted to look at this one is, though, like, we don't have to take fonts so serious sometimes. I think sometimes, I'm on here complaining about licenses and is this workhorse going to have all of the features that we need to have Varial that has this? Like, make a typeface out of clothespins, create it for letterpress, carve it out of wood, and stamp it on a piece of paper. Like, this is what typography used to be. And I think sometimes we forget that it should be fun. We're all here because we love typography, and it can be tangible, and there's a lot to be learned. There's a lot to be, a lot to be gained, I think, from just kind of stepping away from our digital version of what typography is. Last few things we're going to look at. We're going to look at some articles, and then I will give you a video to send you off. The first is a set of articles from It's Nice That. I'm sure most of us are probably familiar with It's Nice That, but if not, it's a publication that does basically a lot of design stuff. They put out this week 6 articles as part of a series on AI. And the thing that caught my eye, I'm sure it's catching your eye right now, are these thumbnails. I don't know if you call them thumbnails or not when they're just on a website, but that's what I'm going to call them, these hero images, these thumbnails. The typography on these is really very striking. I don't know that I've ever seen anything like this, that was digitally done. Sometimes you see stuff like this with like the physical, pieces that kind of trick your brain as they move in the light and stuff. But I really love this type treatment here. And when you click into one of these, like, let's just click on this one here. If you stop and look at it, the typeface, the typography in the background is doing nothing. It's these shapes on top of it, this pattern on top of it, that's really making it look so crazy. Obviously this light and shade one here. Oops. Oh, they're not going to be able to let us click on it. So this one here, you can see like the typeface might be changing. It might just be the pattern on top of that one too. I'm not sure. But these are, AI is a topic that I try to not indulge in too much because the entire rest of the world indulges in this too much. But if you read any of them, read the one that is How AI Makes Us More Alike, because it is an amazing comic. And, it only takes a few minutes to read this. Read the comic. I really like that one. The next one I want to talk about was this one from Creative Bloq. And they did an interview with Bianca Burning. She is the dedicated typographer for Spotify. The interview's, moderately interesting, but I think what the main takeaway here is that if you've ever seen those year-end things for Spotify Wrapped and stuff like that, if you've seen the playlists and things like that, you've seen the typography on Spotify, and it entirely makes sense why they see it as so important and why they would have a staff typographer. Like, that's her job. She does typography at Spotify. That's it. And she does have a history of type design. She worked for Dalton Mogg for like a decade. The interview is interesting. How she got into typography is very interesting. So this will be linked below. But the main thing that I wanted to point out with this one is that Spotify has a dedicated typographer, and they've had one. She's been there for 3 years. They essentially created the position for her to take on this role. And I think that it's nice to see that the industry recognizes how important it is. And even though I wasn't aware of her position there, for the last 3 years, I think that an article like this from Creative Bloq, which is a major publication, might get other companies thinking like, hey, maybe we should have a typographer. Maybe we should pay more attention to our typography too. And I think that's good for the entire industry. The last thing that I want to talk about in terms of articles is one from Elizabeth Goodspeed. I feel like we always bring her up, and it's because she is such an eloquent writer. She does such a great job. I don't know. I think that this idea will probably resonate with a lot of people. And she basically goes after Lion & Lion's new project, Brands Like These. If you don't know, Brands Like These basically is a bunch of unused projects that they are selling to people afterwards. So like they created a design for a designer or for Brands Like These. They create a design for a project. The people don't want it. And then the client doesn't buy it. And so Lion & Lion is now trying to sell these off the shelf to other people for tens of thousands of dollars or euros or pounds or whatever region you are in. And she kind of goes after them. I wish that I had more time to talk about it. I didn't notice that it's already 6 o'clock where I'm at, which is bath time for my daughter. So I do have to get off of here. But it's not just Brands Like These. It's a lot of repackaging designs and stuff like that. And she talks about how that's just not good for anybody at all. So I think if you read any of the articles, read this one from Elizabeth. It's excellent. And now I'm going to send you off with a new video to watch. And that is one from Storied by, let me pull up both of these here, by Storied by PBS. It is Punctuation's Weird Backstory. Gonna go ahead and close that one. And basically this one is, let's mute this. This one is covering Keith Houston's Keith Houston's book, Shady Characters. I will also link that below. But he goes over the history of a lot of these marks and stuff. And I think that PBS, they did a really good job here. This doctor right here, she does a really good job of talking about punctuation and some of the history and things like that. And I think that this is, once again, one of those things that will appeal to people who are not type nerds like you and I. And I think that it's good just for the general, it's cool for us to learn and know all these little hidden secrets and stuff like that. But I think for the general public, it just puts typography in the back of their mind and can kind of, help the industry stay alive and healthy and things like that. So there's the book right there. I will have that linked in the description as well afterwards. But the other thing that why I wanted to bring this up, I should have left this one up, I guess, is because PBS Storied actually cites all of their sources. So I think it's really cool that they do that. Let me see if I can zoom in on this. And you can see I do this as well. So all the sources will be linked afterwards, but they cite all of their sources. So if you wanted to learn more about these weird punctuation and stuff like that, Shady Characters by Keith Houston is a great start. But here are some free options right here that you could check out in the description of their video. So that's what you could go watch next. It is Punctuation's Weird Backstory by PBS Storied. I'm going to switch back to the face cam. Let's see if I'm still working. There I am. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Iago, thanks for chatting in stream. I will definitely check out Fabio Haag and let you know. And if anyone else has foundries or designers that they would like me to check out, I'll definitely do that and report back the next week. I have no problem doing that. I do these live so that I can have interactions with you guys. But that's going to be it for today. I'm going to get off of here. I hope you enjoyed this. Really close to 700 subscribers. Share this with someone if you have another typography friend that you think would enjoy this. Otherwise, I will see you next week for Typography News number 19. Bye.